Introduction. I have nothing left to say. And thank you for this opportunity. To Zygam, who initially asked me here, and to all the others, Arif, Anjum, Amina, Hijaz, all of you who have welcomed us and made us feel so happy here. The title, of course, being Emerging Architecture, I have divided my presentation into two segments. In the first one, I will talk about the work of several colleagues, the defining characteristic being that they're all younger than me. Since Zygam stretched a point to include me in this emerging category. And the second will be some of my work, the post-emerging category. This is just to let you know where we are. Architecture is strongly influenced always, as is life, by this long tradition of 2,500 years of history, from the classical times through to the medieval times, the local traditions, the influence of Portuguese, Dutch, and British rule over several hundred years. The early buildings in the post-independence period were trying to go back to roots, but expressing themselves in concrete, particularly the use of concrete. These two early buildings represent a kind of replication of old forms using current materials. That was the early work. And then the work of the pioneers, Minet de Silva, who pioneered the search for what is considered our roots, or a reinterpretation of that. And of course, the greatest presence in Sri Lankan architecture is the work of Geoffrey Bawa, who the defining characteristic of Geoffrey Bawa's work being the fact that he reinvented himself so many times from his work, which spanned several decades. This building in the 1980s displaying what most people consider to be a Bawa style, when there is no such. And he reinvented himself to design this masterpiece, the Kandalama Hotel, and several other buildings which are so totally different from what he did before. And following him, or in parallel with him, his colleagues, Ulrich Plessner, who was a very strong influence on Sri Lankan contemporary architecture, and his colleague Valentine Gunasekara, who was my teacher, who was this uncompromising modernist who didn't want to tolerate any of this tile roof nonsense. And the next generation of architects, most of whom actually worked in Geoffrey Bawa's office, Anjalendran, who has many friends here, Anura Ratnavibhushana, who at one time was considered the crown prince, following in King Bawa's footsteps. And another important segment of artists and architects, Lucky Senanayaka, who is this artist who also was the draftsman, who drew most of the beautiful drawings that came out of Geoffrey's office. He has designed and built this place called Diabubula, which is his own home. And Vijita Basnayaka, who probably a decade younger than them, but this work represents a particular genre of buildings which are kind of back to nature, very rustic, and which has strongly influenced the work of architects who follow. So I'm going to show in this segment the work of 7 or 8 new faces, some of whom are very well established and have very flourishing practices. I will start with Channa Daswatta, who doesn't look as cherubic as he does in this picture anymore. Channa and Murad, two people who were Jeffrey Bawa's last partners when Jeffrey Bawa closed down his old office and started a new practice. He took on 2 young partners, and like that says something for him that at the age of 75 he took on a new office in which Channa was the oldest person at the age of 25. So that was Jeffrey Bawa reinventing himself. And Channa's work, of course, is strongly influenced by Jeffrey's, although he tries to insist that it is not. But Channa's great forte is in the way he places buildings on site. I think he has absorbed that from the master. The molding of the land. He's a great landscape architect as well. And this building, which is his own house, where interestingly he has used these wooden shutters. It's just one big pavilion on an upper level, surrounded by these wooden shutters, which are reclaimed from the Bentota Beach Hotel, which another architect refurbished, and he threw out these wooden shutters, and in the process the Bentota Beach Hotel, which was one of Bawa's greatest buildings, has been devalued slightly, but Channa used these shutters in his house in a totally new way, and it shows a strong evolution of his work. This is again, he's building in the shadow of the master, the spa added to the Blue Water Hotel. The Blue Water Hotel was done by Jeffrey Bawa with Channa, and now in the post-Bawa period, Channa has added the spa, where he talks about the effects of light and shade, which are a major influence on his work, which of course is something that we all work with in a Sri Lankan context, where the climate gives you this possibility. This is a building where he added to an existing old building. It's the Methodist Junior School. These are the new buildings he's trying to work in a different language next to the old building. And one thing which he certainly has inherited from the master is a sense of fun, doing things which are fun and unexpected, and completely refusing to be bound by any dogma. Murad Ismail was Jeffrey's other partner in his last office, and a very prolific architect. He's just finished designing this Four Seasons, the new Four Seasons Hotel in the Maldives. Murad, in this work, or in the works you'll see here, appears to be far more kind of within the traditional Bawa mold than he actually is. So I don't think these projects say everything about him. In this project, this building is particularly beautiful. It's an Italian restaurant which is floating in the sea. The concept of the open pavilion given life in this very, very beautiful setting. Murad's work is usually fairly bare and unadorned, and this is one of the few instances I think he has allowed some decor to creep in. And this one is Colombo's most sought after venue now. It's the Water's Edge Golf and Country Club, which is a kind of conference clubhouse venue. Once again, the idea of the big roofed pavilion, which is a very strong interpretation of how we build in Sri Lanka. And this spa again, which he added it to an existing hotel, which is considered one of the most sought after hotels in Sri Lanka, but which is very congested. It's called the Saman Vilas Hotel, where it's a very expensive boutique hotel, but the villas are fairly congested. So in this spa, he sought to create an oasis within this congested zone by floating the spa in a pool. This young man, Pradeep Kodikara, is now someone who's outside. He's worked in Jeffrey's office, but he's started to identify himself differently. And this building, although it's not a great picture, it's a very interesting one. It's a lodge in a safari. It's in a national park. It's two open pavilions with a concrete element in the middle which collects the rainwater for reuse. And these openings are simply screened with two sets of bamboo tats, one tilted and one vertical, so that it gives you two layers of protection. A very innovative interpretation of the kind of traditional pavilion form. The reusing of the rainwater. A house in Colombo, a small site on a fairly built-up street, so it works as an infill, and he works with internal spaces, courtyards, in a totally new sense and a totally new language. Very picturesque, very beautiful work, very sensitive. This young woman, Amila, now I'm moving in a particular direction with this work, where you will see it moving from the work of Channa, which is fairly eclectic and borrows from anywhere he chooses to people who are increasingly becoming minimalist in the way they work. This is the Barefoot Garden, the favorite place of certain people here. The garden of the Barefoot Bookshop and Gallery, which is a favorite haunt of many visitors to Sri Lanka. And she added this very simple concrete pavilion to define the courtyard. This is a very interesting building which she has done, which is a flower shop. Unfortunately, the pictures she gave me are night pictures, which don't really show the fact that there is wild grass growing all over it. So it's an urban building, strangely covered with wild grass, completely covered now. A kind of Kandalama influence, but done in a very different sense. This is the main gallery of the flower shop, and this beautiful pavilion on the roof terrace. This is a salon. It's called Salon Kes, which is once again this picture particularly expresses this style of bare steel columns, cement floors, bare concrete slabs, clean glass, shade elements, so forth, which is the kind of minimalist direction that these younger architects are moving in. Varuna De Silva is another in the same kind of age group who has done a series of very beautiful small houses, moving now towards a situation where he says the special effect is the thing, the feeling of light and shade, the breeze blowing through, that's what he's aiming at most. And if the building happens to get wet when it rains, so be it. That's the kind of attitude which Varuna brings to his work. Doesn't bring him a lot of clients, but the ones who are left are happy but sometimes wet. Once again, you see a similarity in the language, in the use of material, a striving for simplicity. I asked these people, all of these architects, to give me some pictures of the work, describe it, and also to tell me who their heroes were, and what they liked and disliked about working in Sri Lanka. And what the notes, I don't know whether you can read this, but these are all their own words. Hiranti Belandave, I have to explain, happens to be my former partner and my ex-wife. She does very interesting work, but she said, your questions are too tough to answer, so you can say anything you like. So I'm a little reticent to put words in her mouth, but this is her own house, which I funded, but she built. Working once again towards, this is another house, the Silver House, working towards a very minimalist agenda, clean, uncluttered spaces, a very strong influence of response to light and shade and natural ventilation. Internal courtyard with an atrium roof, but with parts for cross ventilation to constantly occur. And finally, the work of this young man, Philip Weeraratne, who is probably starting with this house, but moving towards a much more minimalist agenda in work like this. A series of houses where he, a great detailer, there's a glass railing, a railing plus glass tabletop here on a mezzanine level looking down. That's him. You could question whether this is a tropical building, but the fact is that it works, and it works in a very beautiful sense. Can we go to the next one, please? So, looking broadly at these designers, you could see work which is sensitive to the environment, contextual, climate responsive in different ways. One thing you can say about this work is that it is unself-conscious, that it is at ease with itself, it is assured. There is, of course, a bit of arrogance. You cannot deal with architects without experience this sometimes. If the clients have to put up with the rain beating in, that's the usual price you pay for their cleverness. There is also a laid-back quality, which is a reflection of the Sri Lankan tradition of laziness, but and that tradition is alive and well in this generation. The work is also very much a product of the building industry which produces it. And all of these architects in their comments to me complained that the industry is primitive and inadequate and disorganized. But it is the very same disorganization that allows architects to experiment at site while it is being built, to adjust, break, make this kind of hand-molded architecture, opportunities which you don't get in many other countries. I was speaking with Kerry Hill, the Singapore-based Australian architect, and he says he has a house in Sri Lanka where he's built and demolished the roof 3 times, and he says that's a tonic for him because he can't do that in Singapore, so he comes to Sri Lanka where he can break and make and rejuvenate himself. So this work is the product of that system. But this generation, and me included, we are very fortunate to have a new generation of enlightened clients who are open to this experimentation and willing to take risks. This is something very particular which I have realized, that all of these architects, plus many more, have clients who are willing to look at new things, new ways. And for this, I think we must be, we have to thank the preceding generations of architects, and specifically the tremendous influence of Geoffrey Bawa for changing the public perception of what constitutes good architecture. Geoffrey Bawa not only designed buildings like Kandalama, but what's very important is that he persuaded staid clients, corporate clients to pump enormous amounts of money into a building which is in the end rough cement floors and open places getting wet all the time, and the breeze is blowing through. All the magic of his architecture is in that openness, and he persuaded staid corporate clients to accept that as good architecture, and that we have that influence, and all of our clients, I think, have benefited by the influence of that action, and we have him to thank for that. Could we go on to the next? Okay, thanks. So this is some of my work. I've been working with this idea of what I call robust architecture, and this is because when I first, I worked and studied for about 5 years in Finland, in Helsinki, and when I first came back, I designed these clean, white, minimalist buildings. And if the client wore the wrong color of shirt, the space would go to pieces. So I had either to control the client's wardrobe, which I had no interest in doing, or I had to design buildings which could stand up to this, the way people would use them and abuse them and change them and so forth. And I've tried to do this. I don't think I've been successful, but I'm trying. This building, which is called the Kaju Tree House, Kaju is cashew. It's a suburban site where, it's a sloping site with this magnificent cashew tree in the middle, and we built this house around it. The house kind of goes up the hill, and every room is a kind of different experience with this tree. You see it sometimes at ground level, sometimes at upper levels, from the bedroom through a screen, so forth. So that's the tree. That's the main space of the house, which we call the heart. Then there's the public spaces are over here. There's a kind of street going up the steps, and off that you get the children's rooms and the service elements on the other side. And the parents' room is up there. You go up the staircase to that, and I designed, other than the main staircase, from the kids' rooms, another connection. I designed a parent-proof staircase where the kids could go up, but the parents couldn't come down. This is the main space of the house, the heart, and I've tried to be brave here. I've tried to take photographs of architecture with people in them. And this family, their use of space is very laid back. Laid back is a polite word for messy. And so I had to design a house which could withstand their mess. I can say that when I'm out of Sri Lanka. In Sri Lanka, I just say laid back. The surfaces are very rough textured, and I experimented with color on this scale for the first time. And the outside is crushed brick with a base so that it would age very quickly. And sorry, there is a cemetery at the back. And this plaque here has a Buddhist stanza which says that all creations shall perish, and the building is a testimony to that. It's perishing very fast. Screening is a very important thing, and because I like to work with roofs which go up and let the light in rather than come down and cut off the light, screening becomes very important. In this instance, it's bamboo tats, another type of wooden screen, because to filter the sun and also to enjoy the light and shade. The use of texture, material, color, worked with a palette of materials which are very rustic in this instance. The next one, which I call Sun Street, is an office building. It's a tiny office building. The reason it's called Sun Street is because it has this atrium, Kum Street, which is 3 floors high, and it's facing east and west. That's what they teach you in architecture school, that you absolutely should not do. But in this instance, we had no option, because that's the direction of the road and you couldn't face anything else. But also because I've learned in the tropics, you can enjoy the sun. It's not so strong that you cannot screen it and enjoy it. So I've learned to enjoy the direction of the sunrise and sunset. This is the atrium street, and there's this translucent roof where the light comes through and casts these shadows. And what happens is that this office, their business is fairly kind of secretive, and they close the blinds off in front and at the back, so the people inside the office really can't look out. Although I have all these windows, they've closed them with blinds, and I knew that was going to happen. So this is what they see from when they sit in the office, in their work desk. That's what they see, and you see the changing patterns during the day, and at least they know what time of day it is. That's the outside, where I've worked with a lot of these kind of very light shade elements, enjoying working with light and shade and texture. This is the roof terrace. This building is a bakery, Colombo's most prolific bakery. They bake the best bread in town, and it's located in this absolutely chaotic place. It's Gold Road, which is the main thoroughfare, and surrounded by all kinds of buildings and signage and traffic and everything, usual South Asian chaos. So we had to define a building which works for this bakery, which it's 100 years old. It's a third generation, and it's become a neighborhood institution. It's not the place where you just go to buy your bread. You go there to catch up on the gossip, to meet your friends who are in the bread queue and all of that. So it's a neighborhood institution. That was one aspect. The other was this chaos that surrounded it. So the model is this type of building. We call it a kade. It's a little boutique where you have these wooden shutters, and like when you open the shutters, you take them off and lean them against the wall, then there is no facade anymore, and the activity which is inside flows onto the street, and the street and the inside are one. And I thought, for a building which was so much part of the neighborhood, that's a great model. So we try to do this facadeless shop. On the ground and the first floor, it's completely open. There's a roller shutter which you open at 6 o'clock in the morning, and it goes down at 10 o'clock at night, and in the meantime it is completely open. So then, to protect it and shade it, we did this this scaffold. And I have always been fascinated by scaffolding, and here was this opportunity to have a permanent scaffolding. One thing I could point out is that when we were building with all the steel and stuff, what you see here is a crow's nest, which the crow built with pieces of steel wires and binding wire and things. There was a little crow, a crow's nest interpreting my architecture. So this scaffolding with the shade elements, with these canopies, with the possibility for this guy to add things, air conditioners, signage, and he decorates it on Vesak, which is the Buddhist festival, with lights and lanterns on for Christmas. There's a styrofoam Santa Claus with styrofoam reindeer on it, and he does all this stuff to it. I enjoy the detailing aspect, enjoy working with the light and shade. This is the roof terrace where actually you can see the sea from there as well. And behind this, the front segment is where they actually bake the bread. And there was a couple of 100-year-old brick ovens, which I told him at the beginning, we must save these. And he said, yes, we must. But every time I went back, he had broken a little bit more, until I finally built this fence around it. And the whole idea of the roof, which you saw before, is to span over these brick ovens without putting any weight on it. And sorry, that's the roof there. Sorry, pressing the wrong button. Okay, that's the wall and the roof which spans over these ovens, and it pulls in the cold air and it lets out the hot air through ventilation arrangements in the roof. Okay, longhouse 1. This is because I've done 3 now longhouses. I've always been fascinated with linear buildings, and I have to confess that I've never seen his work in the flesh, but just seeing them in books, I am fascinated by the work of Glenn Murcutt. This building is a house in a long, narrow site, which gave this possibility to do this long house. So basically, there are 2 lines. One is this long wall, and one is the long garden. These 2 lines which are drawn out, and everything is kind of stuck on that. So there's the long wall and the main circulation space, and all the rooms are on this side, and a veranda here, and the garden here. The idea of the roof, I've gone from having having flat roofs, to having roofs like this, which are turned up, and then worked with the usual umbrella roof, which is turned down. It's a constant dilemma what to do, which is the better solution. In this instance, the roof is up. Actually, we did 2 solutions for the client, because they wanted to see what it would look like with and without a roof, and I'm glad they accepted this one, where we turned the roof up and it screened the light. And this is the long wall which runs right through the garden, from one end of the house down to the end of the garden, and this bridge actually comes out from inside the house, and there is a room here which is a quiet room where you can get away from the rest of the family and just contemplate the garden, and there are steps leading down as well. That's the double height living room. You see how we've screened the big glass wall. The veranda, I mean, it's not a traditional veranda. It's got this translucent roof with bamboo tats under the translucent sheet, so that you don't notice it every time a crow shits on it. And the screening, which is very important. The car park is an extension of that space. Actually, I like the car park better than anything else in the house. That's from the street. There was an old house in this site which was knocked down, and we saved a little piece from the front entrance of that, which fits into this veranda as a little memory of that past. That's the section. So we have the roof turned up, the big volumes inside in the living room, and then when you go into the rooms, it's two-story. The veranda and balconies on top as a screening element. That's a layer. So that's concrete, and that's timber and steel, which protects it. And an opening here in the roof, which is very important, which lets the hot air out. And the detailing, which I enjoy working with wood and steel. And the screening, these aluminum screens, the bamboo tats, so forth. This one is a small kind of weekend home for a young family based in Colombo. It's about 20 kilometers out of Colombo, on a site next to a river. I wanted to work with this very simple form. So to get a pure geometric form, a pure square to relate to this site, there was an existing visual axis. There was a line of trees on the site which created this axis. So we designed that we would pull the water in. It hasn't been done yet, but that's the idea. Pull the water in along this axis and place the house on that. It has been partly done, not completed, the landscaping. So basically the house is like a cross form, 4 spaces forming, and in the cross the circulation and the toilets and things like that. So you get 2 rooms and the rest is open space, and the outer layer is the protection layer, the pergolas and screens and so forth. That's the section which shows the outer layer and the inner core. So that's the inner, which is protected by bamboo tats on a steel grill, and the outer which gives the shade, the wooden pergolas and the steel structure. This is the living space, and there's a wooden bridge which crosses it above, which works both as a additional sleeping space, and it also goes out to a little balcony at the end from which you can contemplate the river. It's a nice getaway place. This project is quite different to the rest because it's for the tsunami affected village in the deep south of the country. A very beautiful site, a very beautiful village which was on this original site where the lagoon fell into the sea. These were the houses of the old village, and we had connections with this village beforehand. That's how we came to get involved. Very pristine place. The tsunami demolished the entire village, all 30 houses. 9 people died, and they were like completely uprooted. And because the government brought in this absolutely ridiculous rule of leaving a buffer zone from the sea, they were not allowed to do the common sense thing of going back and rebuilding their homes. Instead, they were relocated in a different place and given land carved out from a forest reservation, from the edge of a forest reservation, to build new homes. Of course, the government after 1 year reversed this rule, and these people are able to go back to these places now, but at this time they didn't allow it. When we first went down to see, we had several friends in the village because I had been doing some work there, and we went down to see them. They were in the local temple, in the Buddhist temple where they were housed temporarily, and there was a group of friends who were trying to help them. First thing we did was buy them a bicycle for each family, so that because their present location was 6 kilometers from their houses, so that they could at least go and visit the houses and feed their pets, because their dogs refused to move. They didn't know about the dogs didn't know about the buffer zone regulation, so they went and stayed in the old houses. Our earliest work with the group was more about improving the morale of the people. We did stuff with the kids, just helping them to recover from the tragedy. And then the buildings were built by an organization called the Green Movement of Sri Lanka, who did a tremendous job, not only in building, but in working with the villagers, in motivating them, in taking care of all their needs, and they continue to be there to help them in the recovery process. And we were able to do the design, and that was a great opportunity. And these were the meetings we held under the tree to discuss plans and to hear their suggestions. And they had very, very specific suggestions, requirements, advice, even structural advice, which was very important for us. The site, when we got to it, had been completely razed. There was just the one tree left. And this tree then became the center of the village square. So that tree is there, and we designed the village tree there. The main access road is there, so we designed the path leading to the square. And the playground and the community buildings on this side, so that not only this village, but all the adjoining villages could also use this. And the houses were laid out in clusters of 6 with a kind of central space for each of them. And at the edge, a village forest, so that this is land which is taken from the forest reservation, so that they could replant the forest. And also now, actually it's worked out very well, because the kids have been given plants to plant here, and they're learning about reforestation and things like that from it. And a memorial garden here, which remembers those who died in tsunami. If the layout looks very rigid, and I think it does, it isn't so rigid actually on site, but on plan it looks very rigid. And one of the reasons for that is that we've asked to give each of them what we call 20 perches. A perch is 272.25 square feet, 25 square meters. Each one had to receive 20 perches, and it's a very in Sri Lankan tradition we have a very rich vein of jealousy which runs through our history, and if anybody got half a square inch more than the next guy, it would have been a bigger disaster than the tsunami. So we had to be very geometric, very precise in the way the plots were laid out. The inspiration came from buildings in the village, the typologies in the village, and this fabulous large brick that they made in ovens in the area. Very simple plan form. The only thing which is different to many of the houses that were built in tsunami recovery is that we had 2 verandas, one in front, like where the men hang out, and one at the back, which is between the kitchen and the washrooms on this side, so that the children would play there while their mother was in the kitchen. And we tried to, very simple building with a tile roof, so forth, but cross ventilation, and we tried to work with this brick openings and wooden shutters with. We thought wooden shutters were used because the glare is so strong there, and we thought we would get each family to punch holes in it so that it would create a pattern and thereby create some personalization of it. But of course they said, we don't want your wooden shutters, give us aluminum windows, and that's what they are. After it was built and handed over, they changed all the windows to glass windows, some of them aluminum sliders and so forth. This thing you see here is the rainwater collection tank, because it's a very dry area. And at the back, the roof had the beginnings of another gable, a link, so that they could extend easily from that. They found it very strange. They said, why does the back of the house look nicer than the front? I said, that's because the women use it. The construction process was very interesting. We had a lot of volunteers. We had 25 architecture students from the US who came over and started work on the site. This is what it looks like. This is what it looks like a few months ago. The gardens have grown. The Green Movement has done this fabulous job of teaching them about organic farming, and they've moved in. This family lost a one-year-old kid in the tsunami, and they called us a few months ago to say, can you do an extension for the house, because we are expecting another child. And to me that was like a recovery, a rebirth of their life. They've started to personalize the houses. They've done the ceilings using old saris, and grown the garden. The windows they've added. One more recent project, which is a small house, a very small house actually, overlooking a lake just outside Colombo. And what's special about it is its smallness, which it gives you the opportunity to work with more light and space rather than rooms. It has only 2 rooms and it's very small. So, and the idea was that we took the main living space to the upper floor and created this. I had fun creating this patio, this sheltered patio, which has a wooden floor. It's protected by the roof, and it looks over this vegetation here towards the lake. A small house with a generous budget, so opportunity to work with nice material and detailing, and this staircase takes you to the roof terrace. It's an external wooden staircase. Working again with shading the sun, screening it, seeing the filtered light coming through. This is the double height, very small double height volume that takes you upstairs. Working a lot with wood, which I've started to do now, working with wood in outdoor context. Enjoying the textures of material and the patterns of light and shade, which is what the tropics are about. This is an external lining on the face. Enjoying the detailing, working a lot with little details of steel and timber. And a couple of current projects. Park Square is a kind of mixed-use development in the city. It's based on a set of warehouses which have a history. The present owner's grandfather bought a set of warehouses a set of hangars from the Royal Air Force in 1930s when they were moving their base from one place to the other, and they were knocking down their buildings. He was a very enterprising man. He bought the hangars and just set them up on his land. And so this set of very different structures on this site, which they want to redevelop into a kind of mixed-use development. So We're having fun with this. We have this mainly pedestrian access here with only slow traffic, and two big warehouse buildings on either side, and another building which originally used to be a stables, and enjoying working within the old structure and inserting all the new requirements within that. And another project which I call River Retreat 2, which is a house for a guy who tells me he's the absolute confirmed bachelor, and this is for his bachelor lifestyle. It's a set of pavilions which are connected by various links, but it's kind of spread out over the side. That's his bedroom, and that's his study, and then there are all these links which connect it open. The rest is all open pavilions. So I'm enjoying working with somebody who, I try not to get my clients wet if they don't want to, but this is a guy who says it's all right, I like getting wet, and let the wind and the rain blow through the house. So he only wants to be dry in these two rooms. So this is some current work, and we're having a little fun with this. Also trying to work the idea of the colonnade in far more simple materials which are less expensive and have less presence on the site, because what we want to do is to keep the site as pristine as possible. That's it. Thank you.